everyone. I hope everybody's safe and well as we live through these difficult times. My name's Andrew Jelley. I head up Major Incident Management and Change Management at O2. For those of you that are not aware of O2, they're the UK #1 mobile network operator with more than 34 million customer connections. First of all, many thanks to the team at Major Incident Management for the opportunity to speak at their expo. Hopefully, in future events we can be together rather than all working from home or remotely as we are at the moment. I'm going to talk today just about the transformation journey that we're on at O2 in terms of our major incident management capability. I'm going to talk a lot about the major incident management team, which is one of the teams that I head up. But I think it's important to acknowledge that a strong and successful major incident management process is about all of the people that play a part in that process and not just the major incident management team. And at O2, that will be hundreds of people across our technology functions within IT, within networks, within service management, the wider operations team, and the company generally. There will be hundreds of people that play a role in the major incident management process. Just in terms of how we're organised, I think it's probably worthwhile just outlining this because everybody organises their major incident management functions in different ways. We have a 24/7, 365 major incident management dedicated function. So a team of major incident managers that are working 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Now, I appreciate that's not the same everywhere. Some of you will have major incident managers that may not be part of a dedicated major incident management team. Some of you may have people that step into a major incident manager role when the need arises, rather than necessarily being a dedicated major incident manager. So I just thought I'd give that by way of a bit of context, because some of the things that I'll talk about as we talk about the transformation journey that we're on at O2 in respect to major incident management, some of these things may apply to you, some of them may not, and it's just useful context, hopefully. So just a little bit about me. I started my career a long time ago now at BT as an apprentice, straight from school. I've worked for Mercury and Energous, who are also fixed line operators within the UK primarily, although Energous had some European capability. I worked for a small startup company called Centric Telecom, who, when I pulled this slide together, I couldn't even find a logo for Centric Telecom. But they were a very small, as I say, startup company. Then I spent 15 years at Vodafone, and I've now been at O2 for 18 months. So I've worked in fixed line, mobile, primarily UK-based roles, but also some mainland Europe experience, and major corporate companies, obviously, but also startup organisations. So I've got quite a wide and varied career. The very vast majority of that career is technical roles, certainly in the early days, and then more latterly, kind of management positions, leadership positions, largely always in the operational environment. So that's just me. That's my background. So really, what I'm going to talk about today is where we've been as a major incident management team within O2, where I feel we are now, where we're moving to. And our strategy and the initiatives that we have underway to embark along that journey. So if I look at previously, and as I said, I've only been at O2 for 18 months, so when I'm talking previously here, I'm only really talking about the last 18 months. Now is obviously where I feel we are now, and then next is really where I want us to move to next year. So when I joined O2, what I found was a really strong major incident and a mature major incident management team and process, and a real strength. So I don't want these points here as where I've noted them as previously to sound negative, because they're not meant to be. It was just some of the feedback we were receiving. But in the main, it was a very strong and capable team and process. But there was feedback that we were inconsistent in some of the things that we did. We were very largely reactionary, and this is a key point, it's a key theme as I move through my slides here, that it was a very reactionary team. Now that may sound strange, because a major incident management team by its nature is a reactive team. When major incidents happen, you have to react. But a key theme throughout my story here is that shifting the balance between being reactive and becoming more proactive. Our post-incident activities were not robust. And again, just a point of context, within my major incident management team, we do carry out the post-incident review activities under the problem management process. So again, that may be different for you in terms of how you're organised, but that's the key part. The second part, once we've had a major incident, the post-incident follow-ups that have to happen. And there was little improvement focus. Where we are now, so we're much more predictable. And I'm going to talk about, I'll speed through the now section because I'm going to talk about this as we go through subsequent slides, but we're much more predictable. We practice and exercise what we do and how we do it, and we learn from those practices and exercises and put improvement actions in place. We're much more speedy and timely in terms of our reactions, particularly around things like communications. I think the three main things for me that people want from a major incident management team is: have you prioritised my incident correctly? Are you driving it to the quickest possible resolution? And are the communications clear, consistent, timely, and meaningful from a customer and a stakeholder perspective? And I think we've made big strides in terms of becoming more consistent across those things. But as I say, I'll talk about those more. Communications I've mentioned, continuous improvement. So I firmly believe in continuous improvement, and again, that's a theme that I'll bring to life in the next few slides. Driving major incident reduction. So it's easy to consider major incident to be a reactive team that only deals when problems happen or major incidents happen. We can do a lot more than that. We can drive those major incidents down, I firmly believe. And driving the pre and post major incident activities. Again, I think it's easy to sit as a major incident management team and say, well, we'll deal with the incident when it comes to us, but how do you influence those upfront processes and teams and activities that mean that those incidents come to the major incident management team more quickly, such that you then invoke your major incident processes that drives the communications and drives the quickest possible fix time. And again, we've made good progress in that respect. Where we need to move to, a sustained incident reduction. We've made really good progress this year. We want to continue that in subsequent years. More and more maturity around our post-incident process. Gaining strength from a combined major incident management and change management team. So as of early this year, I picked up the change management team. So I'm now head of major incident management and change management. And I'll touch on the reasons for that as we go through. But how do we get the most benefit from the combined team? Major incident communications that have got a true customer view, customer lens on them, and how do we exploit the tools that we use more so than we are today. So our strategy, our major incident management strategy that drives really everything that we do is in the 5 points on the screen here. So how do we become top left, the red arrows, the UK air display team? They're drilled, they're consistent, they practice, they exercise, they do the same thing over and over and over again, such that you're going to get good quality from them. So, how do we adopt and adapt and bring that same methodology of exercising and practicing into everything that we do? Teamwork. So it's major incident management and change management actually can feel like the kind of roles where you only get the difficult questions when things go wrong. You don't get the praise when things go right. So I think it's important about bringing out the positive aspects of what can be done, particularly around things like driving down incidents that result from planned work. Being proactive, and this ties into the continuous improvement piece that I'm going to talk quite a lot about as we go on. And I've already mentioned being proactive. So how do we shift the balance between being proactive rather than entirely reactive, which obviously a major incident management team can be. You can just be consumed and overwhelmed with the reactive aspects of the role. And to that end, we made a significant change in the team. Actually, we removed 25% of the people that were acting as major incident managers in a reactive role and repurposed them and refocused them onto a proactive role. So that's quite a big leap of faith. We're taking 25% of the team away and we're moving them into a proactive, improvement-based role. And again, I'll talk more about that. Continuous improvement is something that I feel very strongly about. You know, how do you continually improve? How do you get better and better at what you do, irrespective of whether you feel like you're a really good, mature, you know, well-practiced organisation and process? And how do you wipe out waste? You know, major incident management teams are typically always busy doing reactive things, not always major incident related, but they're always busy. And how do you drive out some of that activity that is low value or no value, such that you can create some headroom to do process improvement? So I think the key thing here to bear in mind is the fact that, you know, we've shifted 25% of the team off of the reactive role, restructured how we cover the 24/7/365 shift rota, such that we have people dedicated to process improvement activities. So I'm going to touch now on three main areas in terms of three key themes that we have underway. So, and the first one is, as I've just mentioned, continuous improvement. So I've already said we have we removed 25% of the team and put them into a proactive role. And what we've encouraged the team to do, and not just the team, me, anybody that kind of interacts with the process and the team, is to propose improvement initiatives. And these have grown. If I think back to when we started this, maybe 15 months ago, we had about 30 improvement initiatives underway. So in the last year, we've grown that to 183 individual improvement initiatives that are underway now and being conducted and executed by this proactive team that we now have in place. Now, most of those things are not, you know, they range, they vary. There's some things in there that will be ongoing pieces of work for quite a long period of time. Things like, how do we evolve our problem management process? You know, how do we get to become a stronger team and process from a post-incident review perspective? So that's a long, ongoing piece of work that's going to take time. But many of those 183 are much smaller pieces of work that may only take a few hours of activity, but will add to incremental, you know, marginal gains of improvement rather than a massive change in how we operate. We've got specific focus areas for the year, and I've already touched on some of them, particularly around how do we continually improve our communications, our major incident communications, how do we mature and grow our post-incident activities. And I've already mentioned about objectives. The whole team have got objectives to propose improvement ideas such that we're continually filling a hopper of improvement actions and improvement ideas that the team that we now have in place can use that as their work stack or their work stream effectively to add value back into the reactive aspects of the team. And something I feel like we're just on the cusp of this, but we're definitely starting to drive other processes. You know, if I think about, and I'll touch on some of the successes we've had, but the reduction of major incidents, I think, is a fundamental. It's easy to sit as a major incident management team and say, we'll react when a major incident comes in, we'll deal with it as quickly as possible, and then we'll move on to the next one. But the major incident management team, in my opinion, has the material, has the insight to be able to, they're best placed to understand, in my opinion, the causes of the major incidents and how to eradicate those major incidents. So for me, that's driving other processes, that's driving other teams, that's not being just a reactionary MIM team. And the final point on there is just talking about how do we manage all of those 183 improvement initiatives. I think all companies are now using different tools as we all work remotely. We use Microsoft Teams, and there's a planner capability within Microsoft Teams that allows us to manage all of those 183 activities. And it allows people to kind of place new improvement ideas onto that board, such that the team then review them, prioritize them, take them away, work on them, and then deliver them back into the reactive aspects of the team, such that we can react better. So I think the key thing here is the ability that we've now got to have headroom in the team to create proactive, not just to create, but to execute proactive improvement activities in what is typically a very reactive environment and a reactive kind of process of major incident management. And that's really hard to do. It's really hard to undertake those improvement activities if you're just fully consumed by the reactive aspects of the role. So that's been a key change. Predictable reaction. So I mentioned at the beginning, you know, certainly some of the feedback that I received when I joined O2 was that we weren't always predictable in the things that we were doing. And some examples of that were around things like we effectively have major incidents come in various shapes and sizes. Some are obviously much more major than others. If I think about what I guess, industry-wide would probably be caused a crisis management process, when you have a really big incident, that's few and far between. It's certainly few and far between in O2, and it's probably few and far between in most mature organisations. The problem that infrequency of occurrence drives is when you need to invoke those processes, you're not practiced, you're not well versed, and they typically don't always happen in the way that they should, in a repeatable and sustainable way. So we've spent a lot of time not just exercising our processes, and when I say exercising them, I mean really pulling together some real life scenarios and a full kind of exercise and test of our crisis management process, for example. So one thing's the exercising of those processes, which is no small feat in itself, but then also the post-exercise reports and the actions that arise from the exercising. Because I think the more you exercise, the better you get, but there's always things that can be improved upon. There's always improvement areas, even if you feel like an exercise has gone 95% well, what about the 5%? So how do you take those actions such that you can drive better and better every time that you need to invoke those processes? So exercising and post-exercise reports and actions has been really key to us. Process-related and not just technical post-incident reviews. So post-incident reviews, in my experience, not just at O2 but elsewhere, can be very focused on the technical aspects of a failure and why did it happen, which is obviously the right thing to do to prevent recurrence and repeat issues of the same type. But something that we need to focus more on is the process aspects of a post-incident review. How quickly was it fixed? How quickly was the major incident management team engaged? And if it was longer than our process and our major incident management policy says, then why, and what can we do about that? So bringing more focus from a process perspective to our post-incident reviews. The middle bullet point there with the 3 sub-bullets it's a simple thing, but it adds a huge amount of value. It's something that we've implemented quite recently. We just meet as a team every morning. Every morning, assuming there's been a major incident in the last 24 hours. If there hasn't, the meeting gets cancelled. And we review that major incident in terms of things that I've already mentioned, the engagement time, the prioritisation, the communications. If the engagement time was too long, why was it too long? What can we do about it? If the prioritisation of the incident with the benefit of hindsight was wrong, what can we do about that? And how do we make sure we prioritise it right next time? Were the communications strong, accurate, timely? And if not, why not? In terms of communications, I mentioned it as being one of the really 3 key things that I think are, a key part of what customers and stakeholders kind of consume from a major incident management team. And that's communication. So we've done a lot of work around templating as many of our communications as we can, such that in the heat of a major incident scenario, lots of the communication content is already pre-scripted and pre-written, such that the major incident managers don't have to think about what they're going to say all the time. And by the nature of human beings, everybody would write something in a slightly different way anyway. So it leads to more consistency. It leads to less time and effort required on communications when you're in the middle of a major incident management scenario. And multi-channel major incident communication. So we use a third-party tool for pushing our major incident communications out, but we now push it out through every possible channel that I can think of. We send them via the app on the phone, we send them via SMS, we send them via email, we send them to our workplace environment internally, we send them to the chat capability within Workplace, we send them to Microsoft Teams, we send them to the chat capability within Microsoft Teams. So I think we're now sending our communications to every channel that I can possibly think of, such that our internal stakeholders can consume those comms in whichever way they see fit. And I've already talked about the major incident management, what I call the MIM engagement time. So how do we drive that down at the front end, and which I think is really important. As I said earlier, it's easy to sit back as a major incident management team and say that we will deal with something when it arrives to us. If you put yourself in the shoes of the customer, that's not where you want to be. The customer's been impacted at the point of failure, not at the point when the major incident management team gets involved. So how do we start to drive those front end processes such that we're receiving the incidents more quickly? And the third theme I was going to talk about, just before I come back to some of the successes we've had as a result of the work that we've got going on, is something, again, I've already touched on. I feel really strongly about this, is the major incident management reduction. So, you know, I firmly believe, when you think of, certainly in a big mature organisation like O2 and some of your organisations, you have many technical teams, many departments that will understand their specific part of major incidents. I firmly believe the major incident management team are the team that have got the right data, the right insight, the right evidence to identify the common themes of failure. So how do we drive specific action and specific activity focused on driving down those common themes of failure? I mentioned the post-incident reviews earlier. Typically, you drive a whole load of actions from a post-incident review that you then, you know, as long as you close those actions down, you can be relatively confident that that exact same scenario shouldn't happen again, or if it does happen again, you can mitigate it or you can fix it more quickly. But then you get something that's very similar but slightly different, and every major incident is always somewhat unique by its nature. So how do you identify those common themes and tackle those common themes such that you're driving down the causes of the common themes rather than just the very specific things that cause each and every major incident? We have a lot of supplier focus in terms of how we work with our suppliers, how the suppliers contribute to our major incident management process in terms of causing major incidents. You know, we have a big supplier base, as you can probably imagine, as I'm sure many of you do. Those third parties do cause major incidents sometimes, and are very engaged in our major incident management process. So this isn't, you know, we're making sure we're trying to drive a closer and closer relationship with those third parties, such that they're kind of doing all the things that I'm talking about here in terms of making sure that they're focused on reducing major incidents in their environment, such that the impact on us is less. One of a cause of major incidents, I think everywhere, I haven't worked anywhere where it's not a cause of major incidents, is plan work. You know, all big companies go through lots of change, lots of plan work, technical plan work, much of which is very, very complex, and can cause problems from time to time. That was part of the logic behind me being asked to head up our change management team, you know, building that strength between major incident management and change management, such that we've got a real focus on how do we reduce our major incidents caused by plan work. And I'll come on in the next slide to some of the successes we've had in that respect. And the other common area from a major incident reduction is around resilience testing. So we're doing more and more resilience testing to make sure that those aspects of our network, our IT infrastructure, that are very resilient, are tested. That resilience is tested such that when you see a failure or you see a plan work, you can be confident and comfortable that that resilience is going to do what it should do. So in terms of some of the successful outcomes we've seen as a result of, you know, hopefully the story that I've portrayed there around moving people into a proactive role, putting more focus on proactive improvements and trying to drive other things and other processes and other teams rather than just focusing on, you know, the major incident management team. I've listed here some of the things now. Talking about major incident volumes is company confidential information, so I can't share volumes. So I've used words like significant and large. I wish I could share volumes because we've made significant strides in terms of, you know, the reduction of major incidents that we've seen year on year. So, you know, I've used the word significant in inverted commas, but it is significant. You know, that's all I can say in that respect. The same from a major incident caused by plan work perspective, you know, driving those down and making sure we've got the right level of rigor such that, you know, those changes that have got a level of risk associated with them are being managed and scrutinised as closely as possible such that the risk of failure is minimised. And again, we've seen a really good downward trend in respect of major incidents caused by plan work. MIM engagement time, we've reduced that by 50% over the course of the last year, and we'll continue to focus on that next year. I've mentioned that several times. That's making sure that we're shortening the time between the customer being impacted and the major incident management process being invoked. And that's so important for the purposes of, you know, mobilising those processes that mean you're going to get it fixed as quickly as possible, but also getting the communications out. You know, when there's a large scale failure, I'm sure your companies are all the same. Customers call in, customer services gets inundated. As soon as you can start putting some proactive messaging back the other way, it takes some of the heat out of the situation, because you're telling customers, yes, we've got a problem, yes, we're dealing with it. And if it's taking too long to engage that major incident management process, then that isn't happening. Excuse me. We've seen a really good reduction in mean time to repair for major incidents. I've already talked about what I would call our crisis management process being invoked consistently. And, you know, it's so rarely invoked. It is one of those things that we exercise and we practice. And that's one of those things that I remember when I joined 18 months ago, a lot of feedback about we've got to get this right. You know, I'm now confident we get it right. There'll always be areas for improvement when you look back on each scenario with the benefit of hindsight, but we take those learnings and we build those in so that we're better in the future. Consistent and timely. I've referred to first communications here for the reasons I've mentioned, you know, pushing that communication back into the customers via whichever channels, whether that's back through customer services, is really important. But it isn't just the first communications, it's about the consistency, the accuracy and the timeliness of all of the communications within the major incident management process. The multiple channels of approach for consumption of communications I've already spoken about. In-house automation. So we've done a lot of work. I said we use a third-party tool for our major incident communications, for example, and that's just one example. But we've got a lot of expertise. We've built a lot of expertise in the team to be able to develop that tool and that capability, such that it does some of the things I mentioned earlier. You know, it takes away some of the manual effort required and removes some of that waste in the team, whereby things like you know, automated. Templated and automated communications are inherent within the tool, and they're pushed to multiple channels much more quickly and readily than they were before, which obviously saves time within the process. And I think all of that well, I don't think, I know, all of that has resulted in some really positive stakeholder feedback that we've received within O2 about our major incident management team and process. And I'll make that point again, because, you know, it's one thing about the team, but it's much more for me about the wider process and all of those people that interact with that process and contribute to that process, whether it be very directly and very frequently, or whether it be indirectly and infrequently. You know, there will be hundreds of people that contribute to a major incident management process. So just before I end, I just wanted to leave you, I guess, with just some key takeaways, and I've mentioned all of these, but this is just a bit of a wrap up, really, just in terms of the things that have worked for us. I'm not saying they'll all work for you. You know, everybody's different. Everybody's at different stages of maturity in terms of development of major incident management teams and processes. But the things that, you know, I guess I would summarise everything I've already spoken about. Sorry, in the 5 bullet points here are. Making space for proactive improvements, and that for me is the number one thing, and that's that change that we made that I referred to earlier, where we removed 25% of the team. That for me has given us the headroom to become much more proactive, such that when we need to react, we're better at reacting. I hope that makes sense. Incremental gains. So this is about looking for those small kind of marginal gains rather than massive change. You know, we've got a very mature team and process within O2 from a major incident perspective, so it isn't a case of tearing it to pieces and rewriting it. It's strong. It was strong 18 months ago. This is about incremental gains to make it stronger and stronger and stronger year on year. Exercising the processes, I've already mentioned that. You know, learning from when you have to invoke the various processes for real, but also exercising them such that certainly those ones that you don't have to invoke very regularly, you're exercising them such that when you do need to invoke them, you're better placed to be able to invoke them. But not just exercising them, really learning from the exercise, what went well, what didn't, and how you can improve, even how you can improve the things that went well, because it's not always right to focus on just the things that didn't go well. You know, you can get better at the things that do go well. The major incident management, both the process and the team to drive the other ITIL processes. So I've touched on that several times around, the major incident management team having the insight and having the understanding of what causes major incidents, and how do you therefore drive other processes such as, the change management process, for example, as a result of, or with an intention to drive down major incidents as a result of change. And then the common themes for incident reduction. The key focus for us is reduction of incidents to obviously minimise the impact upon our customers. That's what we're here for. But finding those common themes, as well as driving down the post-incident review actions for each and every major incident. But I think it's really key to find those common themes, because every major incident is subtly different, but there are common themes through them. And it's not always easy to find them. It takes a lot of analysis, a lot of deep diving. But once you understand those common themes, I really think you can start to, and we're certainly doing that internally, driving the right conversations at the right levels within the organisation to drive the right actions to drive down the major incidents. So that's my final slide. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you found it somewhat useful. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you again for the team at Major Incident Management for giving me the opportunity to speak here. Keep safe, keep well, and I look forward to speaking to you again at some point soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.